The field was red before the sun went down. 10,000 men lay in the grass, and the grass drank what was left of them. Somewhere in that carpet of dead, a man knelt beside a wounded enemy, a Valyrian steel sword still in his hand. He was showing mercy. The arrows found him there. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Mysteries of the Realm. Episode 11. The Blackfyre Rebellion. Was Daemon Blackfyre the rightful king? His name was Daemon Waters. Born around 170 AC, bastard son of King Aegon IV, a king so cruel they called him the Unworthy. His mother was Princess Daena Targaryen, called the Defiant, a woman of fierce independence who had been locked in the Maiden Vault by her own brother. Daemon was a Targaryen on both sides. His blood was as Valyrian as any true-born prince who ever lived. At 12, his father knighted him. At 12, his father gave him something else, a sword called Blackfyre, the sword of the Conqueror, the blade that had passed from king to king since Aegon first set foot on Westerosi soil. Daemon took it. He took its name. He became Daemon Blackfyre, and he founded a house around it. He grew into the warrior the realm had been waiting for. Tall, strong, silver-haired, violet-eyed, he wielded Blackfyre as if the Conqueror himself had returned. Men who saw him fight said the same thing. He looked like a king. He moved like a king. He was everything a king was supposed to be. And on his deathbed, his father lit the match that would burn the realm. Aegon IV legitimized every bastard he had ever sired, from the sons of princesses to the sons of tavern girls. Every last one. A single decree. And then he died. The sword was already in Daemon's hand. Now the name was on his tongue, and the question was planted in every lord's mind like a seed that would not stop growing. Was Daemon Blackfyre the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms? Or was he the most dangerous pawn in Westerosi history? A weapon forged by a dead father, sharpened by bitter men, and aimed at a throne he may never have truly deserved. That is what we are here to investigate. Start with the sword, because everyone else did. Blackfyre was not an heirloom. It was a scepter. It passed from the Conqueror to his sons, and from them to theirs, through every king who sat the Iron Throne. Giving that sword to a bastard instead of the true-born heir was not a gift. It was a statement. Some believed Aegon was naming Daemon his successor without ever speaking the words. The world of ice and fire records it plainly. Some felt that the Conqueror's sword symbolized the monarchy, so the gift was one of the seeds from which rebellion grew. But there is an objection, and it cuts deep. Aegon IV also gave Dark Sister, the companion Valyrian steel blade, to another bastard, Brynden Rivers. If giving a sword means naming an heir, then Aegon named two, and a king who names two heirs has named none. There is a simpler reading. Daemon was a warrior. Daeron was a scholar. A father gave a battle sword to the son who would use it. The gift may have been practical recognition of talent, not a transfer of sovereignty. But symbols do not care about intention. Once the sword was in Daemon's hand, the lords of the realm saw what they wanted to see. And what many of them saw was a king. The legitimization should have settled things. It did the opposite. On his deathbed, Aegon IV issued a decree that could not be undone. Once legitimized by royal decree, a bastard cannot be made bastard again. That is both law and ancient custom. Even Daeron II, who had every reason to strip the decree away, treated it as irrevocable. But here is the fault line that cracked the realm in two. Does legitimization give a bastard a place in the succession? Almost certainly. Does it give a bastard priority over a true-born heir? That is a different question, and one that no law in Westeros has ever answered. When Robb Stark legitimized Jon Snow, he had to separately name Jon as his heir. 2 legal acts, not one. Aegon IV performed only the first. He made Daemon a Targaryen. He never said Daemon should inherit before Daemon, and he did not legitimize Daemon alone. He legitimized everyone. Every bastard, from the son of a princess to the children of common women, whose names the histories do not bother to record. If this was a succession plan, it was the most reckless one ever devised. If it was sabotage, a dying king's final act of spite against the son he despised, it was masterfully done. The decree gave Daemon a door. It did not tell him to walk through it, but there was a whisper that changed the shape of everything. A rumor that could make the strongest legal argument collapse, or make the weakest one unassailable. The rumor was this, that Daemon II was not Aegon's son at all, that the true father was Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, Queen Nerys's own brother, the most celebrated knight in the realm. That Aegon's true-born heir was himself a bastard, born of forbidden love and hidden behind a crown. If that rumor is true, the entire legal picture inverts. Daemon becomes the bastard. Daemon becomes the only legitimate male line heir. Every lord who fought for Daemon unknowingly fought for a usurper. But follow the evidence. The rumor was not discovered. It was manufactured. According to Maester Caith, one of the most respected historians in Westeros, Aegon IV himself invented the accusation and spread it through a knight named Ser Morgul Hastwyck. The king crafted the lie, and the lie was tested. When Ser Morgul publicly accused Queen Nerys, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight defended her honor in trial by combat. He slew Morgul. In the eyes of the gods and the law, Nerys was innocent. The divine verdict was rendered, but Daemon's supporters ignored it. They believed the rumor because they needed it to be true. Here is the paradox that George R.R. Martin has planted at the center of this story, and it is not an accident. The only source for the paternity rumor is a king the entire realm agrees was one of the worst men ever to wear the crown. A king called the Unworthy. A king whose body was rotting with flesh worms when he signed the decree. If you believe the rumor, you are trusting the word of a man no one trusted while he lived. And yet Martin has never confirmed or denied whether the rumor is true. He has deliberately left it unresolved. The ambiguity is structural, not accidental, because the question is not whether Daemon was really Aegon's son. The question is whether you are willing to tear a kingdom apart on the word of a dead liar. That is the gamble every lord who supported Daemon had to make. Now set aside the legal arguments. Set aside the sword, and the decree, and the whisper. Because the Blackfyre Rebellion was not ignited by law, it was ignited by men. 3 men, specifically, stood behind Daemon, and each had reasons that had nothing to do with his claim. The first was Sir Quentyn Ball, called Fireball, the master-at-arms of the Red Keep, the man who trained Daemon from boyhood. Fireball was denied a place in the King's Guard. The White Bull was chosen over him, and he channeled that rejection into a cause. He did not just teach Daemon how to fight. He taught Daemon to believe he deserved a throne. A boy who hears every day from the man who shaped him that he is the true king. That boy will eventually believe it. The second was Aegor Rivers, called Bittersteel, another of Aegon's great bastards. A man who never smiled, and a man whose hatred for his half-brother Bloodraven ran so deep It became the organizing principle of his life. 3 layers of poison fed that hatred. Bittersteel's mother, Barbara Bracken, had been displaced as the king's mistress by Bloodraven's mother, Melissa Blackwood. The ancient Bracken-Blackwood feud made personal and intimate. Bittersteel desired Shiera Seastar, the most beautiful woman in the 7 kingdoms, and she chose Bloodraven instead. And while Bloodraven received Dark Sister, Bittersteel received nothing but a name. Barristan Selmy, one of the most perceptive observers in this world, would later count the Bittersteel-Bloodraven-Shiera rivalry among the great love conflicts that caused wars. That assessment is worth weighing carefully. How much of the Blackfyre Rebellion was about a throne? And how much was about a woman who chose one brother over another? The third force was not a man, but a grievance. Daeron II had married Miriah Martell and brought Dorne peacefully into the realm. It was his greatest diplomatic achievement. It was also the thing that cost him half his kingdom's loyalty. Dornish lords flooded the court. Dornish privileges increased. Lords who had spent generations bleeding in wars against Dorne now watched their former enemies receive honors and positions that had once been theirs. The resentment was real. It was structural, and Bittersteel knew exactly how to aim it. But here is the detail that should trouble anyone who believes Daemon acted on conviction alone. He waited 12 years. Aegon legitimized him in 184 AC. Daemon did not rebel until 196. 12 years of silence. 12 years of being a Targaryen in name, holding the sword of kings, hearing men whisper that he was the rightful ruler, and doing nothing. If a man truly believes he is king, he does not wait 12 years to claim his crown. Something else was happening. Something slower than ambition and more methodical than rage. Martin tells us the breaking point. In 187 AC, Daeron married his sister, Daemon's half-sister, Princess Daenerys, to the Prince of Dorne. Martin himself has called this the straw that broke the camel's back. Think about what that marriage looked like from Daemon's side. A sister he cared for, handed to Dorne as part of a diplomatic bargain. Not a marriage of love, a transaction. And to the lords who had bled in the Dornish wars, who had buried sons and brothers in that sand, it was worse. Dorne was being rewarded with a royal bride for the privilege of finally bending the knee. The enemy they had spent generations fighting was now seated at the king's table, holding his sister's hand. But even that wound took 9 more years to become a rebellion. The evidence suggests a process, not a moment. Bittersteel built the coalition. Fireball reinforced the belief. The anti-Dornish lords provided the constituency. And year by year, grievance by grievance, Daemon was shaped into a weapon by men who needed him to fight a war that served their purposes as much as his. Was Daemon a genuine claimant? Almost certainly. He was not stupid, and he was not passive. But was he self-igniting? The 12-year delay says no. A man who believed in his own right from the beginning would not have needed a decade of persuasion. And then came the Redgrass Field. The war had lasted nearly a year by the time the two armies met. Daemon stood at the height of his fortunes, only a short march from King's Landing, a very real chance of victory. Then 2 blows fell before a sword was drawn. Fireball, Daemon's greatest general, the man who had trained him, the military mind the rebellion could not afford to lose, was killed by a common archer when he stopped for a drink of water. The greatest strategist on the Blackfyre side, killed by an anonymous nobody before the battle even began. And Lord Bracken, who had sailed across the narrow sea to hire Myrish crossbowmen, was delayed by storms. The ranged support Daemon desperately needed never arrived. Daemon fought anyway, His charge was so devastating that the Targaryen reserves had to be committed early. He met Sir Gawain Corbray on the field, and for nearly an hour the two greatest swordsmen alive dueled a horseback. Valyrian steel against Valyrian steel. Blackfyre against Lady Forlorn. Those who witnessed it said the sound carried for a league. Half a song and half a scream. Daemon cut through Gawain's helm. Gawain fell, blind and bleeding. And then Daemon did the thing that defines him more than any claim, any sword, any decree. He dismounted. In the middle of a battle that would decide who ruled the Seven Kingdoms, Daemon Blackfyre knelt in the mud beside a fallen enemy and tried to save his life. It is said that if Daemon had not stopped, he might have broken Prince Maekar's left flank before Bloodraven reached the ridge. The road to King's Landing would have been open. The war would have been his. But he stopped, because that was who he was. While Daemon knelt in mercy, Bloodraven's raven's teeth, elite archers carrying weirwood bows, gained the Weeping Ridge above the battlefield. Their arrows fell like rain. They killed Daemon Blackfyre. They killed his twin sons, Aegon and Aemon, 12 years old, boys who died beside their father under a sky full of arrows. Bittersteel saw them fall. He claimed the sword from beside the bodies. He charged Bloodraven's position with nothing but grief and fury. And in the fighting, he took Bloodraven's eye, the wound that would define Bloodraven's face for the rest of his impossibly long life. But then, Prince Baelor Breakspear arrived with Dornish spears and Stormlanders, and the hammer fell on the anvil. The rebel army shattered. Bittersteel fled across the narrow sea, carrying the sword and Daemon's surviving children. The field got its name from the blood. 10,000 dead. The grass was red for a season. The rebellion was over. The cause was not. Daemon's death did not close the wound. It made the wound sacred. Bittersteel founded the Golden Company in exile, a sellsword company whose true purpose was never selling swords, but restoring the Blackfyres to the Iron Throne. On his deathbed, he ordered his skull boiled and dipped in gold, mounted on a lance. Every captain general since has done the same. The company's battle cry echoes to this day. Beneath the gold, the bitter steel. 4 more Blackfyre rebellions followed over 64 years, each one weaker than the last, and each one proof that the death of the man had only deepened the devotion to the cause. A living king can disappoint. A dead one cannot. Daemon became more powerful as a martyr than he ever was as a claimant, and every generation that followed inherited not just his name, but the grief of the Redgrass Field. The last pretender, Maelys the Monstrous, a grotesque figure with a vestigial twin head growing from his neck, was slain by young Barristan Selmy, the end of the male line of House Blackfyre, but perhaps not the end of the line entirely. So what do I believe? I believe Daemon Blackfyre was not the rightful king, not because his blood was wrong or his sword was meaningless, but because the legal case, when examined honestly, favors Darren. Legitimization grants status, not priority. Aegon IV never named Daemon his heir. The paternity rumor almost certainly was a lie, crafted by a king the realm itself called unworthy, and the trial by combat rendered the gods' verdict. Nerys was innocent. Darren was true-born. But I also believe the question is not really about who was rightful. Not for Martin, not for us, because Martin constructed this story so that the legal arguments balance almost perfectly. And then he placed at the center of it a man who knelt in the mud to save a wounded enemy while arrows fell around him. He made Daemon brave and beautiful and chivalrous, and doomed. He made the man with the weaker claim the more sympathetic figure, and he made the man who killed him, Bloodraven, the kinslayer, someone history would call a hero. I believe the real question Martin is asking is not who was the rightful king. It is this: what makes a king at all? Blood? A sword? A decree? The love of the people? Daemon had arguments for every one of those things, and he still died in the grass. And perhaps that is the most haunting answer of all. That in a world built on dragonfire and conquest, rightful is just a story, powerful enough to make men kill for it. Power resides where men believe it resides. No more and no less. The arrows on the Redgrass Field were the only verdict that mattered. Daemon Blackfyre was not the rightful king, but he might have been a good one. And we will never know, because the man who showed mercy was the man who did not survive. So tell me this: was Daemon Blackfyre a true king denied his throne, or a good man used by bitter men to fight their war? Write it in the comments. I read every theory. And if you want to be here when we unravel the next mystery, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next